Hey everybody, welcome back. This is Tim with the University of Vinyl. I am going to be doing, this is episode 3 today of my new series, The Crown Jewels. These are a series of videos that are shining the light on one album per video, and they are the best sounding records in my collection. I'm going to do 50 episodes. Today is episode 3, and as you saw in the opening vignette, I'm featuring Workbook, the first solo album from Bob Mould. Of course, Bob Mould, famous for being a co-founder of Husker, the post-punk, initially punkish, and then moving more into kind of a melodic alternative rock, which was very influential on bands like Nirvana and the Pixies, that really kind of cashed in on a lot of the sound and the soundscapes and the songwriting that was forged by Bob Mould, Grant Hart, and Greg Norton from Husker Du. In May of 1989, Bob Mould released Workbook. This was a long time coming. He had recorded most of this album in upstate Minnesota during most of 1988. If you recall, Husker Du's last album, Warehouse Songs and Stories, was released in January of 1987. And they did touring for most of 87. And Bob Mould, in December of 1987, during that tour, Bob Mould had stopped drinking. Grant Hart had substance abuse issues, which basically brought Husker Du to an end at the end of the day. But Bob Mould had left Minneapolis, St. Paul, moved about 3 hours north into a farmhouse, and that's where he kind of workshopped Workbook. I believe that is actually a photograph that was taken in that house. There is Bob. You know, take a look at that photo. This is kind of what you see on the tin. It looks very introspective. Yeah, that could be an early morning with a little bit of sunshine or light coming through in a winter month. Very cool kind of collage cover art that we get here. But you'll see here Bob Mould taken during late 1988, most likely, maybe early 1989, that photograph. You see Bob Mould, who has kind of cleaned himself up. He is no longer kind of just, wearing t-shirts. Still a heavy smoker at that point in time. But again, he had quit drinking. Other, ancillary issues that he may have had himself, but, no longer doing popping pills to get through a relentless touring cycle, in a van with the other two guys in Husker Du. This was a quickly maturing Bob Mould, and he had lost quite a bit of weight, and probably in pretty good health, clear of mind, and very introspective, and that is all what we get on Workbook, which is a fantastic album. It's a total departure from Husker Du. Even though Husker Du were moving more into a pop and a melodic, hard-tinged, post-punk feel, this is a largely acoustic record, although there is some gorgeous chiming electric guitar here. Mould was using a 12-string acoustic, and that is really highlighted fantastically well on the opening. In interviews, Bob Mould said that the opening track and the last track are on an album are incredibly important as far as making an impression, making a lasting impression. And Sunspots is the opening track. It's totally acoustic. It's a finger-picked 12-string acoustic tune, classically based, and it is gorgeous. It's an incredible way to start this record, and you know immediately that, whoa, this is not Husker Du. And many people took that in a negative light because they wanted slash and burn Mould. And you get that in pockets on this record. There are some deep tracks on this record that have to do with, religious overtones and undertones, and maybe a little bit of shade being thrown at the end of the Husker Du journey as it ended. Maybe some of this was pointed at Mr. Hart. All I know is that it is, one of those kind of catch-all words that we throw out. It's a cathartic album, and it's a cathartic listen. There are shiny highs and deep, dark lows on this record. And this is, I have an original pressing on the Virgin label, near mint condition. It's a DMM master disc cut. This sounds really, really nice. Now, there was a 25th reissue that came out on Omnivore, and you can see that they've added that tagline on the bottom, Workbook 25. We get similar artwork, but interestingly enough, we get this record spread across 2 records, so a little more space to breathe, and I think the reissue is fantastic. I will always love the original. It has huge slam and punch and nuance, because this is a nuanced record. That was the original inner sleeve. I'm mixing up my inner sleeves. This is kind of cool. It's kind of a reimagining of Bob sitting in that chair, although this time it's on a beach somewhere near Santa Cruz, I believe. And there is a shot of that original photo, but Bob's not in the photo. We get a little essay here from Ryan Adams talking about how important this album was to him. You know, in May 1989, I had just arrived in Chicago, Illinois. I was moved in with a buddy of mine from high school and college, and I was working on finishing up my degree. I had, had a bit of a patchwork college career, joined fraternity at the University of Michigan, and I was more concerned with, let's just say, social aspects than actually getting up in the morning and going to class. So I had to take a little bit of a breather from my college career, moved to Chicago, started waiting tables and bartending, and going to Northwestern University at the Chicago campus, and then also up in Evanston. A lot of that stuff was done at night. I was taking train rides, between the Gold Coast of Chicago. We had an apartment on Dearborn and Gerda, if you know the area. A heady time for me, and I remember having that record on my mind a lot. I was listening to WXRT in Chicago, great kind of indie rock channel, one of the best in America. And this really made an impact on me, this record. I loved it. I remember reading the review in Rolling Stone, ran out and bought the CD at that point in time. And I picked up the original record, the vinyl record, I don't know, maybe 3 years ago. I found it here at a shop in Longmont, Colorado. And of course, I picked up the 25th reissue. So, best of both worlds. I will say, though, that the original and the reissue, fantastic sounding record, great music, kind of an important album, and certainly for Bob Mould, because it kind of set him out on his own path, and he's had a very, very successful solo career since then. Of course, he took a 3-year break and formed Sugar in 1992. Basically, because of this record, it really put Bob Mould and Husker Du on my radar. And one of the best shows I've ever seen was Cabaret Metro in Chicago, 4 blocks north of Wrigley Field. And I saw Sugar do the entire Copper Blue album in its entirety that night. Fantastic. I've got some ancillary noise here from a couple pups who are a little bit impatient, so apologies for that. Mould did extensive touring behind this album, and his live band was fantastic. He had Tony Maimone on bass and the great Anton Fear, who we lost last year, on drums. Both of those guys were in Pere Ubu, and of course, Anton Fear was the driving force behind the Golden Palominos. He had a little stint in the Feelies as well. Back to the reissue again. There are reissues that include a bonus live show from Cabaret Metro, I think in 1989, featuring that live band with Mould, and I think he also had Chris Stamey along, who played second guitar on the record, kind of fleshed out the sound. So that is episode 3. Make sure you subscribe. Make sure you like the video if you like the content. I am going to be doing 47 more Crown Jewel videos between now and the end of the year. So stay tuned for those, and hope everyone has a great week. Thanks a lot.